Good evening, everyone. This is Vinita Nair from Vinod Kothari and Company. This session is to discuss about the recent amendments in SEBI Prohibition of Insider Trading Regulations 2015. And this presentation is, of course, for academic purpose only and not intended to be a professional advice or opinion. The contents of the presentation is solely for academic purpose, and no part of this presentation is intended to be solicitation of any kind of professional assignment. So Vinod Kothari and Company has been a firm with an experience of over 30 years. We are based out of Calcutta, Bombay and Delhi. And we've been very active in doing presentations or academic research on various areas of corporate law. Prohibition of insider trading regulations, if we have to discuss, we are all aware that the base regulations were enforced in the year 1992, and thereafter in 2015, the 1992 regulations were repealed and we had SEBI Prohibition of Insider Trading Regulations 2015. This was pursuant to the committee report of Mr. N.K. Sodhi, former Chief Justice. And thereafter, there were certain amendments made in the 2015 regulations from time to time. Majority of them were made from in 2018 to 2020. And one of the major amendment that was made in 2018 was pursuant to the committee report on fair market conduct submitted by Shri T.K. Vishwanathan. So insider trading, the essence of insider trading is to ensure that none of the investors are able to deal in the securities while in possession of unpublished price sensitive information. At a listed entities level, every designated person or every employee is required to ensure that they do not indulge in communicating any kind of unpublished price sensitive information. I would refer that as UPSI during the course of the presentation. So every employee or every insider who is in possession of UPSI is bound by the regulations and is not required, is not supposed to communicate UPSI. Similarly, any person is not expected to procure any kind of UPSI from an insider. Listing regulations that is applicable to an entity which has any of its security listed also provides as a general principle that every listed entity is required to devise a framework to avoid insider trading and abusive self-dealing. SEBI, being a market regulator in India, securities market regulator, is active in ensuring that there is no kind of insider trading or any kind of violation of securities market pursuant to dealing when in possession of UPSI. So insider trading is applicable to every listed entities, every entity which is proposed to get listed, every intermediary. When I say intermediary, SEBI registered intermediary, say example, a broker or a merchant banker, or a bankers to an issue, or a registrar or a transfer agent or a depository participant, etc. Fiduciaries would mean any entity which is in the service of, which is into rendering service to listed entities, and during the course of service, it is likely to be in possession of UPSI. For example, law firms, stat auditors, secretarial auditors, consultants, advisors, suppliers. So any person or any entity which, while dealing in the ordinary course of business with the listed entity, is likely to have or likely to be in possession of UPSI, would be regarded as fiduciaries. So we've discussed series of amendments in the PIT regulations. Firstly, the amendment in the 2015 regulation was made in December 2018. However, the provisions were, or the amendments were made effective from 1st April 2019. Thereafter, there was an amendment in January 2019, which was effective from the date of publication in the Gazette. Then in July 2019, which became effective from 25th July 2019. Thereafter, the amendment in relation to informant mechanism was introduced in September 2019, which became effective from the 100th day of publication in the Gazette, being 26th of December 2019. And lastly, the recent amendment that has been made in PIT regulations in July 2020, which has become effective from 17th of July 2020. So we firstly discussed the synopsis of various amendments made in PIT regulations. So the amendment in 2018 were made pursuant to submission of the committee report headed by Mr. T.K. Vishwanathan on fair market conduct. So firstly, there was changes in the definition of UPSI as a reference to material events pursuant to listing agreement was omitted, as material events are now provided under listing regulations. The definition of compliance officer provided that the compliance officer should be financially literate, and the explanation of financial literate was inserted to mean someone who is having the ability to read and understand the financial statements. The regulations were made applicable to entities which were even proposed to be listed. So that included securities of unlisted companies that applied for listing. Second amendment was in relation to identification of designated persons. So prior to 2018, there was a concept of designated employee, and the criteria of identification of designated employee was any person or any employee who, pursuant to seniority or function in the organization, was likely to have access to UPSI. In 2018, the definition was inserted in the regulation, not in the defining section, wherein it was provided that the board of directors and the compliance officers were required to determine the persons who have access to UPSI and accordingly determine the list of designated persons based on the function and seniority. The regulations also provided a list of persons who should be included in the definition or in the meaning of designated persons, which we'll be discussing in the later slides. Then there was a concept in relation to concept of sharing of UPSI for legitimate purpose. It was amended by way of an insertion that there has to be a policy for determining what would be regarded as a legitimate purpose in the code of conduct, and accordingly the sharing of UPSI would be permitted only if it is for a legitimate purpose. Maintenance of structured digital database. This was again a new insertion, as there was no such requirement in regulations 1992 as well as regulations 2015. This was pursuant to various leak of UPSI and investigations that were undertaken by SEBI from time to time, wherein they realized that the time and the effort spent by SEBI in accessing the information or identifying to who all the UPSI was shared, it was felt by the committee and it was enforced by SEBI that every listed entity is supposed to maintain a structured digital database wherein they would be entering the details of persons with whom UPSI has been shared for any kind of legitimate purpose. So the idea was not to record sharing of UPSI between two designated persons, as designated persons being by virtue of seniority or function in access of UPSI, where anyways had access to UPSI, therefore there was no need to record it in the database. But ideally the requirement was when any person other than a designated person or any outsider were shared UPSI for a legitimate purpose, in that case there was a requirement to record the name of the persons in this database. The database is only required to be maintained so that in future, if there is any kind of investigation by SEBI, they would be able to evaluate as to during that time frame, the information or the UPSI was shared with or what categories of person. So the names of the person, PAN or any other identifier, if PAN is not available, was required to be recorded in the structured digital database. There have been changes in relation to maintenance of structured digital database in the recent amendment of 2020, which we will be discussing in the future slides. Institutional mechanism for prevention of insider trading. So it was the regulations were amended to provide for internal controls to ensure that UPSI is not communicated. At the same time, the designated persons do not trade while in possession of UPSI. And it was provided that the CEO, MD, and all other persons shall be responsible for ensuring the effective system of internal controls. And therefore, companies were required to develop internal control checkpoints. In relation to whistleblower mechanism, there was a cross-reference inserted wherein it was mandated to sensitize employees under the vigil mechanism or under the whistleblower mechanism, to sensitize that they'll be able to blow the whistle even for leak of UPSI to the company or to the regulators. There was also a requirement to frame a policy or frame a mechanism on the process and the methodology to be followed to bring people inside. When we say bring people inside, basically the persons who are not having access to UPSI, if they are being given an access to UPSI, there has to be a proper means as to how and when these peoples can be brought over the Chinese wall or can be brought inside and given an access to UPSI. And therefore the companies were required to include this as a part of the code of conduct, and also sensitize their employees as to when any person can be brought inside and be made in possession of UPSI. In relation to trading window, earlier the companies used to follow a practice of closing the trading window when the intimation of the board meeting was given to the stock exchanges. So from the end of quarter till the agenda for the board meeting went to the stock exchanges, the trading window used to remain open, which is why it was prescribed in the regulations that especially in case of financial results, the trading window has to close from the end of quarter till 48 hours after the declaration of the results. And in case of any other UPSI, the trading window was required to be closed from the point the information was made available to that particular insider. And this decision of determining the periodicity of trading window closure was given to the compliance officer. Policy for leak of UPSI. So there were instances before this amendment of leak of UPSI by way of WhatsApp or such other mechanism, wherein SEBI thereafter decided that every company should have a policy or a mechanism to handle leak of UPSI. We will be discussing on what should be the components of this policy in order to ensure that there is a correct mechanism for handling leak of UPSI. There was a requirement to obtain annual declarations by the designated persons about details of their immediate relatives who are financially dependent on them, as well as persons having material financial relationship. This was a new concept as it was felt that it is very easy for a designated person to give a loan to a third party and then ensure trading in the securities of the listed entities. And in this manner, the DP will be able to comply with the code, violate the provisions, and would the violation would skip the attention of the company as well as SEBI, which is why any persons with whom the DPs had a material financial relationship was also required to be disclosed. The definition was wherein they have given a loan or gift during the preceding 12 months of at least 25% of the employee's annual income. In that cases, name, PAN, phone number of such persons with whom the DP shares a material financial relationship was required to be disclosed. Additionally, DPs are also required to provide the name of the educational institution from which the DP has graduated and also the name of the past employer. So all these steps were to identify the circle, the possible circle of a DP, so that in case there is any violation or any leak of UPSI in future, SEBI would be able to easily track the same person to the circle, person to the circle by way of the educational institution from which the person has graduated or from where he had last worked, or through the persons with whom he has material financial relationship. Code of conduct was required to be framed for intermediaries and fiduciaries. So earlier, under the previous regulations, before this amendment, there was a common set of minimum standards which were to be adopted by the listed entities as well as the intermediaries and fiduciaries. However, pursuant to this amendment, there was a bifurcation, whereas wherein Schedule B was provided the minimum standards to be inserted in the code of conduct of the listed entity, and Schedule C provided for the minimum standards to be inserted as in the code of conduct of intermediaries and fiduciaries. Trading while in possession of UPSI shall be deemed to be motivated by UPSI. So there were certain events that were regarded as a carve out for trading in possession of UPSI. So there are certain individuals or certain DPs who are always in possession of UPSI, and therefore that doesn't mean that they cannot trade at all. So there were certain carve outs which were given for from trading while in possession of UPSI, being trades in the nature of interstate transfer between insiders or trades pursuant to a trading plan disclosed to the stock exchange. Trading transaction by way of a block deal mechanism wherein the buyer as well as the seller were in possession of UPSI. Then transactions which were carried out pursuant to any statutory or regulatory requirement or to carry out a bona fide transaction, as well as it was clarified that transaction pursuant to exercise of ESOP, wherein the exercise price was predetermined, would not be regarded as a trade motivated on account of being in possession of UPSI. In relation to the concept of designated persons, like we said that earlier there was a concept of designated employee, but in 2018, the concept of designated employee was substituted with designated persons, wherein the designated person was regarded as it was to be identified by the company based on certain examples which were given in the regulations. And the basis for identification was if the person by virtue of function or seniority had access to UPSI. The indicative list of designated person which was inserted in the regulations include employee of intermediary fiduciary if they are in possession of UPSI, employees of material subsidiaries as designated by their board of directors, promoters of the company or promoters of the investment company for intermediaries and fiduciaries, CEO and employees 2 level below the CEO of the company or the intermediary or the fiduciary, support staff of the company, intermediary or fiduciary. So this indicative criteria was given for the listed entity as well as intermediary as well as fiduciary. So when a listed entity was required to identify, it would be looking at its own employees who pursuant to seniority or function had access to UPSI. Promoters and promoter group would be included. Material subsidiaries, since it contributes to 20% or 10% of the income of the consolidated income of the listed entities. Therefore, those employees in the material subsidiary being in possession of UPSI were also considered as designated persons for the listed entity. CEO and employees 2 level below the CEO based on the reporting hierarchy or based on the organizational hierarchy were deemed to be regarded as senior employees and pursuant to their seniority had access to UPSI and therefore were included in the definition of designated persons. And support staff being having access to UPSI pursuant to their function. For example, the executive secretary to the executive directors or the entire secretarial team or the IT staff would have access to UPSI pursuant to their function. So they were also required to be included in the definition of designated persons. We also discussed about the institutional mechanism which was required to be framed for prohibition of insider trading. And the CEO, MD, or such other person of the listed entity were mainly responsible for ensuring existence of internal controls. So when we say that how will we ensure internal controls, Firstly, we need to ensure that all the employees who have access to UPSI are identified as designated persons. If the identification of DPs is not correct, then we will not be able to ensure that they are governed by the code of conduct, as the code of conduct under PIT regulations is mainly applicable to the designated persons, and therefore correct identification of designated person is very critical. UPSI, identification of UPSI is also very crucial to be understood. It is not that UPSI generates, each time a new UPSI gets generated. So a company has a history wherein it is pretty well aware about the kind of UPSI that has generated in the past. And therefore it is very relevant to understand at what all points or all the instances of UPSI that got generated, from which departments these were generated, which were the employees who were handling such UPSI, what kind of persons were brought inside for this UPSI. So since there is already a history available with the company, they should be using it to ensure that the identification of UPSI is standardized, wherein you are able to identify the departments where the UPSI originates, and also the kind of persons that are brought inside. For example, financial results is a kind of UPSI, which ideally originates or is handled by the accounts team. And there are KMPs who have access to the UPSI, and you bring the stat auditors inside in order to share the UPSI for the purpose of auditing the financial results. So accordingly, there has to be a categorization of how the UPSI has to be identified and who all people are required to be brought inside for the same. Adequate restriction on communication or procurement of UPSI. So the manner in which the UPSI is procured or communicated cannot be without existence of an SOP or a control within the organization. List of all employees with whom the UPSI is shared has to be maintained. Even the outsiders with whom the UPSI is shared has to be maintained. And NDA should be signed, especially when you are engaging or you're bringing outside people inside. And therefore, confidentiality agreements or non-disclosure agreements are required to be executed, as well as there has to be an entry made in the structured digital database with the details of PAN and other requirements. Internal controls effectiveness again has to be periodically reviewed. It can be subjected to audit by the internal auditors or by the third-party auditors to understand whether the entire controls implemented by the listed entity is effective or not. We also discussed about the requirement of having a policy for leak of UPSI. So firstly, there is a need to frame a mechanism to prevent any leak of UPSI. Firstly, we identify the source of the leakage, like how the UPSI got leaked. Was it pursuant to communication by any DP? Was it pursuant to any hacking of the system in which the UPSI was stored? So basically identifying the source of leakage. Then we define the process of inquiry in case there is any leak or suspected leak of UPSI. So we need to discuss the procedure of dealing with that leak. Then you authorize the audit committee or the stakeholder relationship committee or any other committee to ideally take necessary steps against the person who is found to be guilty. Mechanism should be in place to initiate appropriate inquiries on becoming aware of leak of UPSI, mechanism to handle the leak of UPSI, and then you try to plug the loopholes in the internal control. So once you have done the entire inquiry or investigation and able to identify that what was the cause of leak of UPSI and what was the process or the modus operandi through which the UPSI got leaked, in that case, thereafter we have to plug the loopholes in the internal control to ensure that this is not repeated in future. Then you also need to educate the employees regarding the leak that happened, how the action was taken, what kind of action was taken against the person, and also educate them regarding reporting the leakage or suspected leak of UPSI. At the same time, take action against the person who was responsible for leak of UPSI and inform SEBI promptly about such leaks. So any kind of policy or mechanism, especially in relation to insider trading, will not be effective unless it is sensitized to the employees. This is a policy, or this is the policies and codes framed under insider trading regulations are required to be implemented and are required to be adhered to by the designated persons, by the employees of the organization, and therefore sensitization plays a very important part when it comes to effective internal controls under insider trading. The provisions also prescribe who are responsible to ensure internal controls. So the CEO, managing director, or any other person designated by the board of directors are responsible for establishing adequate and effective systems of internal control. And there is also a requirement for the audit committee and the board of directors to review at least once in a year that the listed entity is complying with the PIT regulations and they have effective internal controls which are adequate and operating effectively. So since this was introduced and became effective from 1st April 2019, after the end of financial year 1920, in this audit committee meeting, the audit committee meetings of this year, there will be a requirement to have a separate agenda on reviewing the internal controls under prohibition of insider trading regulations, and this will be required to be placed before the audit committee and the board. Internal control manual. So while this is not a mandatory requirement under the regulations, however, considering that every listed entity is required to ensure internal controls, it becomes much easier when there is a policy document or a manual to ensure the same. Since there is a confirmation to be given before the audit committee and the board by the CEO, MD, or the authorized official, this can be implemented only when there is a manual or an SOP in place. So we have discussed the contents of this manual. So firstly, what kind of information is regarded as price sensitive, and then identifying the departments or the divisions where this UPSI arise, and how we ensure that there are adequate systems to ensure that the UPSI doesn't get leaked. We also have to monitor in what manner the UPSI can be transmitted to other insiders. Basically, the process of bringing people inside. By this, we mean that firstly, you can bring people inside or you can share a UPSI only for legitimate purpose. There is a need to have a policy as to what would be regarded as legitimate purpose for your business, or for the business of that particular listed entity. Then we also need to know how this UPSI would be communicated to the stock exchanges and be made generally available. Determination of possibility of leaks of UPSI. And accordingly, we also in the process lay down or pen down the roles of board of directors, audit committee, CEO, compliance officer, so that every functionary is aware about their responsibility or their role under the insider trading norms, and it becomes easier to ensure internal controls. Basis all of this, there will be a review of the internal controls effectiveness by the audit committee. There is also a need to include it in the whistleblower mechanism and sensitize the employees about blowing the whistle even in cases of leak of UPSI. And therefore, all of this would be able to be implemented only if there is periodic sensitization. There can also be a compliance manual, especially for the compliance officers. So as we discussed in the previous slide, that for every functionary, that is the board, the audit committee, CEO, MD, as well as the compliance officer, we can list down the functions to be ensured under PIT regulations. And especially for the compliance officer, we can consider having a compliance manual to ensure effective internal control, wherein it would be consisting or comprising of the checkpoints by way of compliances to be ensured under the regulations. For example, how the UPSI is determined, how the digital database is to be maintained, in what periodicity entry has to be done, how the platform is effective and is secured and it cannot be tampered, identifying the designated persons, periodic reporting to chairman, in what manner the pre-clearances has to be provided, what will be the recording for that, post pre-clearance, what reporting is required to be made. So the compliance manual is something which is specifically to be made in order to make the task of compliance officer easy. Next, we come to the PIT regulations, the amendment that were made in 2019, wherein there was an insertion of promoter group for the purpose of disclosure requirement. So earlier the provisions only provided for promoters, directors, and KMP. Thereafter, pursuant to 2019 amendment, even the promoter group were inserted in the disclosure requirements regulation 7. In relation to trading window closure, it was mandated that trading window closure has to be ensured from the end of quarter till 48 hours after the declaration of financial results. So while this insertion was made in 2018 itself, however, there was a confusion as the language was that the company may close trading window from the end of quarter, which led to an interpretation that companies have an option to decide, and on a voluntary basis, it may decide to close from the end of quarter. So by way of the amendment, it was clarified that there is the requirement of closing trading window from the end of quarter is a mandatory requirement. It was also provided that a permitted transaction by the designated persons when the trading window is closed. It was provided that pledge of shares for bona fide purpose, like for raising of funds, as well as acquisition pursuant to a corporate action like conversion of warrants or subscription to rights issue or a preferential allotment, etc., would not be regarded as a violation of the norms. So basically, the designated persons could undertake these kinds of trades even during window closure. Lastly, there was in PIT Third Amendment Regulations 2019, the whole concept of informant mechanism was introduced, wherein there was an option given for voluntary disclosure of information about a violation of PIT regulations, and the informant were provided protection. And there was a detailed mechanism provided, pursuant to which even the companies were required to amend their code of conduct to provide valid protection to any of their employees if they end up becoming informants to the SEBI. The recent amendments that were made on 17th of July 2020. So firstly, in relation to structured digital database, it was provided that it is required to be maintained by the board, and it is required to be maintained internally. The maintenance of structured digital database cannot be outsourced. Firstly, thereafter, there was a requirement of recording the name of persons with whom the information was shared. Pursuant to this amendment, it was clarified that name of the person sharing the information, so the giver of UPSI or the person sharing the UPSI, his details will also be required to be recorded in the database. There was also a clarification in relation to preservation period. So structured digital database was required to be preserved at least for 8 years. And if there were any ongoing litigation or proceedings in that matter, then till conclusion of the proceedings, the structured digital database will be required to be preserved. In relation to trading window restrictions, while we discussed carve-outs in the previous slide, wherein it was provided that in case of any trades pursuant to subscription to rights issue or conversion of warrants or preferential allotment, the trading window restrictions would not apply. The idea was where there is a detailed separate procedure prescribed by SEBI for subscribing to the securities. In that case, the trading window norms should not be applicable. It was felt that offer for sale, and there were certain kind of corporate actions which were not covered in the said clause, pursuant to which SEBI decided to insert an enabling clause so that they could include any other corporate actions and provide a carve out from the trading window restrictions. Thereafter, on July 23rd, 2020, SEBI-wide circular clarified that offer for sale as well as subscribing to rights issue would not would be a valid carve out, and the DPs will be permitted to undertake the same even during window closure. System driven disclosure. So SEBI in 2018 provided for system driven disclosures, but that was limited to directors, CEO, and 2 level of employees below the CEO. So basically the requirement was to furnish PAN and names of these persons to the depository, and thereafter any trades done by these persons were automatically taken from the system of depository and communicated to the stock exchanges. So while there was a system driven disclosure already implemented, the requirement for physical disclosure under regulation 7.2 was not discontinued. Pursuant to this amendment, it has been discussed that the entire requirement of continual disclosure would be shifted to a system driven disclosure gradually, and there will be a SEBI circular prescribed on the manner of implementation of system driven disclosure for the entire continual disclosures. In relation to violation of regulation, there were two major amendments. Firstly, that for any violation of code of conduct, companies used to take disciplinary action, or companies required to take disciplinary action against the designated persons. And at times, these actions are also by way of a monetary penalty. However, the code provided for disgorging the amount of gain only in case of contra trade and not in any other case. And therefore, the companies were not remitting these amounts that were collected by way of monetary penalty to SEBI. And therefore, an amendment was introduced to provide that any amounts which were collected by a company pursuant to violation of code of conduct should be deposited to or should be credited to Investor Protection and Education Fund. SEBI-wide circular of July 23rd, 2020 provided the details of IPF account in order to facilitate transfer of these amounts to SEBI IPEF. Lastly, it was also provided that initially any violation under insider trading regulations were required to be reported to SEBI. And there was, in July 2019, there was a standard format prescribed by SEBI for reporting the violations. Pursuant to this amendment, it was prescribed that in order to ensure data storing and to maintain a repository, instead of SEBI, the violations would be reported to stock exchanges. While it is still not clear that whatever violations are reported to stock exchanges, whether that will be available in public domain or not. But as of now, any violation of the code of conduct and the PIT regulations are required to be reported to the stock exchange. SEBI, in its circular of July 23rd, 2020, has prescribed the format of reporting the violation and has suitably modified the erstwhile circular. So the standardized reporting format for COC violations, you need to provide the information about the listed entity, the action taken by the entity and the reasons for the action taken. You need to provide information about the designated person or the immediate relative, whoever is involved. And then you need to provide the transaction details, basically in what script the trade was done, or what was the value of shares, what were the nature of violation, and what were the instances of violation in the previous financial year. Is it a kind of a repeated violation? And also the details of or the proof of transfer of any amount collected from the DP for the violation to IPEF. So post amendment, if we look at the requirement of maintaining structured digital database, so firstly you have to, and this is to ensure that you share UPSI only for legitimate purpose, and while sharing the UPSI, you record it in a database providing the name and PAN of the person sharing the information as well as the person with whom the information is shared. The structured digital database should be maintained with adequate internal controls so that we can ensure that the same is not tampered. There is an audit trail that is permitted, and there is an adequate time stamping. It was also prescribed that the structured database should be maintained for 8 years and for a longer period in case there are pending proceedings before SEBI. and that the maintenance would not be outsourced and it will be maintained internally only. Contents of digital database was prescribed by ICSI in the guidance note on PIT regulations. There is no standard format of database which has been prescribed by SEBI, and this has been prescribed only by ICSI. So, in relation to closure of trading window, post amendment, the position stands like in case of financial results, the trading window is required to be closed from the end of quarter and it will open within 48 hours after declaration of results. And for other points or for other instances, the same has to be closed from the time the information is available to the insider. There are certain carve-outs which have been provided. The exceptions that are provided permitting trading even during window closure are in case of interstate transfer or in case of transaction by way of a block deal mechanism between two persons who are in possession of UPSI, or if the transaction is pursuant to any statutory or regulatory requirement, or is it pursuant to exercise of ESOP where the exercise price is predetermined. Even pledge of shares for bona fide purpose is permitted to be undertaken at the time of window closure. And then transactions wherein there is a separate requirement or separate regulations of SEBI providing for the norms. For example, conversion of warrants, issue of securities, buyback, delisting can also be undertaken during window closure. The one that is highlighted in red has been was an enabling provision which was inserted in July 2020, pursuant to which the SEBI circular provided a carve out for offer for sale as well as rights issue, and that can also be undertaken or that can also be tendered to at the time of window closure. We also would like to discuss the contents of the code of conduct and the disclosure requirement under PIT regulations. So before we proceed, it is important to discuss about the difference between the two codes that we frame under insider trading regulations. So firstly, we have a code of conduct to monitor, report, and track the trade done by the DPs. And secondly, we have a code of fair disclosures. So the code of conduct is applicable to the employees or to the designated persons and are required to be complied by them, while the code of fair disclosure is actually applicable to the company, the board of directors, and the persons who are responsible for disclosure of UPSI as a generally available information. So the scope of both the codes are very different. One is to monitor and control the trades by your employees, and secondly is to ensure that the same UPSI is disclosed in a uniform and a fair manner to the public. So code of conduct for the listed entity is applicable to the designated persons and their immediate relatives, and the onus of formulation of the code is on the CEO and the managing director, and the compliance officer is required to ensure implementation of the code and sensitize the employees on the same. So ideally, the contents of the code of conduct is manner of identification of designated persons and policy in relation to how the UPSI can be given access only on a need to know basis or only for a legitimate purpose. The code of conduct should also detail out the functions of the compliance officer, as there are various functions spread across throughout the regulations as well as the schedules, and therefore it is advisable to collate all the functions of compliance officer in the code of conduct. Threshold for seeking pre-clearances, because there is a requirement for the DPs to get their trades pre-cleared. However, the limit for seeking pre-clearance is something that needs to form part of the code of conduct. The formats for seeking pre-clearances and for reporting of trade, for reporting the initial disclosure, annual disclosures, each of these formats should also be provided in the code of conduct. Restriction in relation to contra trade, the power to grant waiver in case of contra trade, necessity to record the decisions for granting waiver, determining period of closure of trading window, the requirement to maintain a restricted list. So the requirement of maintaining restricted list or gray list is a concept wherein the employees of the listed entity are expected to be in possession of UPSI of another listed entity. So wherein a holding listed entity has a listed subsidiary and there is any kind of UPSI that is relating to the subsidiary, in that case, the compliance officer has to ensure that the designated persons are not able to trade even in the shares or securities of the listed subsidiary. So the concept of restricted list or gray list is not to restrict trading in the company's securities, but in the securities of other listed entities. And what would be the actions or penal provisions that would be imposed in case of violation of the code, including reporting of violations to the stock exchanges, should also be included in the code of conduct. When we discuss about the code of conduct for the intermediaries of fiduciaries, so when I say intermediaries, a broker, a bank, credit rating agencies, mutual funds. When I say fiduciary, it would mean the audit firms, consultants, law firms that deal in the ordinary course of business with the listed entity and have access to UPSI. In that case, there is a requirement for them to frame a code of conduct in order to regulate the trades that are done by their employees in the securities of the client listed entity. And therefore, the head of the organization would be responsible for formulating the code. The reason for referring to head of the organization is because the intermediary or fiduciary need not necessarily be formed as a company. It could be a partnership firm, it could be a sole proprietor firm, it could be a trust, it could be an LLP. So depending on the nature of the entity, of the intermediary or the fiduciary, it has to be ensured that the head of the organization responsible for formulating the code and also sensitizing its own employees to ensure that the employees do not trade in the shares of the client listed entity. The compliance officer of the intermediaries or fiduciaries is expected to maintain a restricted list or a gray list confidentially so as to ensure that their own employees do not trade in the securities of the client listed entities. The difference between the two codes is that in case of a listed entity, the board is the CEO or the MD is responsible for formulating the code. In case of intermediaries and fiduciaries, the head of the organization. The minimum standards are prescribed for each of the categories under separate schedules. In case of listed entity, there is no express requirement of maintaining a restricted list, while in the spirit of corporate governance, wherein the employees of listed entity have an access to UPSI of other listed entities, they should be maintaining. But statutorily, the provision under Schedule B was omitted. But in case of intermediaries and fiduciaries, the compliance officer is required to maintain a restricted list, especially in relation to the client listed entities, wherein the employees of the intermediaries or fiduciaries should be prohibited from trading in the securities of the client listed entities. The requirement of closure of trading window is something very specific to the listed entity. It is not, so an intermediary or fiduciary does not decide on the trading window norms for the client listed entity. They will simply adhere to the trading window norms of the client listed entity. We also discussed about the requirement to have a policy on manner of bringing people inside, basically sharing of UPSI for legitimate purpose. So there has to be a system to track where the information emerges and till the time it is disclosed to the public. So there has to be a path identified for every kind of UPSI, because that will help or assist the compliance officer to ascertain that what is the flow of information of UPSI, and during and in the process of that flow, how many people are required to be brought inside. For example, if it is in relation to financial results, so it originates from the accounts team, it then the draft financials are even, you bring the stat auditors inside for auditing the financial, and then it is placed before the board, and thereafter it is disseminated to the stock exchanges. So the flow of basis, the flow of information, we are aware that it is only the stat auditors that are required to be brought inside for in case the UPSI is in the nature of financial results. So similarly, the path has to be identified for every kind of UPSI so that it is more clear and an SOP can be let down on the kind of persons who are required to be brought inside. There has to be the responsibility on a person who is authorized to share the information. So it cannot be that any person within any department will be able to share the UPSI. It can be done only for a legitimate purpose with the sanction of the head of department or the compliance officer or the director. The manner of sharing the information is also important because it can be only shared after the details are entered in the structured digital database and after valid confidentiality agreements or non-disclosure agreements are executed with the receiver. The reason for recording such, sharing such information should also be recorded in the policy. And the protocol for sharing of information as to for what all purpose it can be shared, what are the steps for sharing, with whose approval is required for sharing the information, should also be included in the policy. What is most important to ensure effective implementation is to sensitize the person. Sensitize the person who is sharing the information as well as the person with whom the information is shared, to ensure, so all the likely safeguards that are to be ensured by the receiver is required to be sensitized. And assuring that the whoever is responsible for sharing or whoever is responsible for handling the UPSI is aware that this information is confidential and cannot be shared unless provided in the manner in the policy. Now we discuss on the disclosures and the PIT regulations. So we have an initial disclosure wherein it has to be obtained from promoters, directors, and KMP. On commencement of the regulations in 2015, it was required to be obtained within 30 days. And in case of new directors, new promoters, or new KMPs, there is a requirement to obtain the same within 7 days of becoming a promoter, director, or KMP. This is an internal document. This is not required to be filed with the stock exchanges. However, this needs to be obtained within the set timelines. And thereafter, members of promoter group were also inserted under the disclosure requirement, wherein on commencement, it was required to be obtained within 30 days from effectiveness of the amendment that was in Jan 2019. And in case of new members adding to the promoter group, an initial disclosure has to be given within 7 days. In relation to continual disclosure, every promoter, member of promoter group, designated persons and directors are required to give continual disclosure if their transactions in a calendar quarter exceeds rupees 10 lakh, and the disclosure is required to be given within 2 trading days of such transaction. On receipt of this disclosure, the listed entity is required to submit the same to the stock exchanges. Pursuant to the July 2020 amendment, this entire process is proposed to be made system driven. So we'll have to wait for the SEBI circular on this. And in case of an off-market trade, there is a requirement to disclose. There is no monetary threshold. So any insider doing an off-market trade is required to report the trade within 2 working days to the company, and the company is required to inform the same to the stock exchanges. The requirement to disclose is within 2 working days of getting the disclosure from the persons or becoming aware about it. So wherein you are tracking the trades of your designated persons, or you're tracking the trades on a weekly basis from the RTA. In that case, on becoming aware about the information, the disclosure has to be given by the listed entity. So the onus is on the DP as well as on the listed entity to give continual disclosures. Annual disclosures by DP. So several companies obtain annual disclosures from the designated persons on the details of the immediate relatives who are financially dependent on them, and the persons with whom they share a material financial relation. So the details of immediate relatives who are financially dependent, and as well as the details of persons with whom the DPs share a material financial relationship. These disclosure is required to be given on an annual basis and as and when there is a change in the information. We have already discussed the meaning of material financial relationship, wherein if you give a loan or a gift during the preceding 12 months equivalent to 25% of the DP's annual income. So the names of these persons, PAN and phone number is required to be obtained. In case of DPs, additionally, we also obtain the names of educational institution from which the DP has graduated and the details of past employers on one-time basis. You can read our other resources on insider trading at the links given here. Thank you very much. We hope the presentation was useful and gave you a gist of all the amendments that has been made in Prohibition of Insider Trading Regulations 2015 during last 1.5 years. Thank you.